Hello, Cedar Falls. This is Currents Up Close. I'm Amanda Huseman, Communication Specialist for the City of Cedar Falls. Our show helps welcome the community to learn about news, updates, and projects going on in our city. We are excited to announce that Cedar Falls has recently been upgraded to a AAA tax bonds rating from Moodys Investor Service. It is the highest rating achievable by an entity, and only 3 other cities in Iowa have achieved this rating. But what does it mean to the citizens? We've welcomed Jennifer Rodenbeck, Finance and Business Director from the City of Cedar Falls, to help explain. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us today. First, can you explain what a tax bond is?
Sure. So oftentimes in city finances, you'll hear us talk about general obligation bonds or general obligation notes. And what the term general obligation means is that it means that the debt service on those bonds will be paid back through property taxes. And so the support and credit for those bonds is backed by property taxes. That is unlike other things where we might have revenue bonds, where it's by a specific revenue source, like our sewer utility might do that. But again, in this case, when we talk about general obligation tax bonds, we're talking about bonds that will be repaid 100% by property taxes. Okay,
so what is Moodys Investor Service?
Sure, they're a national firm, well actually international firm, that does ratings of a lot of governmental entities and corporate entities. And what they're really doing is looking at what's the financial stability of the city. They're looking at really what's the credit risk. And they're doing that for the investors to really let investors know, is this a risky investment by them? Is it a stable investment? And so obviously the higher the rating means that they see you as a safer credit risk, more reliable to be able to pay that money back.
Okay, and I mean, only a few other cities have this rating, so how did Cedar Falls get to the point where they achieved it as well?
Sure. We've actually been working for quite a few years to get to this rating, and it really is based on a lot of different factors. And one of the factors is they looked at that we have strong cash reserves. And why they look at that is because they want to know that the debt service can be repaid. And so they know that in this case, when it's backed by property taxes, if there was a change in a property tax revenue, we have reserves that can still pay for that. So obviously having strong cash reserves, they look for that. The other thing they look at is that a lot of our reserves are liquid. So if we need to get to them, we can in a short time period. So they look at our liquidity. The other thing they're going to look at is how much other debt do we have? So as we're selling these bonds or notes, they're looking at, well, what other debt service do they have? So they want to make sure if we already have a lot of other fixed costs, can we still pay these back? So the fact that Cedar Falls has a very low amount of other debt also helped. And then probably one of the big factors they look at is, just what are our financial policies and practices? And so, they want to look at, do we do conservative budgeting? Are we making sure we're accounting for expenses, we're not trying to overinflate our revenues, that we're doing that conservative budgeting? They're looking at our tax growth. Are we trying to do some policies and incentives to increase our tax base? And then just, again, sound practices, again, that they look at the fact that we're doing a 5-year capital improvements plan or CIP, and we're using that to look at what are some different revenue sources we can pay for projects. We're also trying to save up for some projects and use cash for that versus always having to sell debt to pay for a project. So those are just things that Moodys just sees that, okay, this seems like this is an organization that takes those financial practices and policies seriously. Again, can continue to have that conservative approach, and all that really is just a credit to not only current council members and elected officials, but prior ones, because good for all of them that they've tried to stick to these sound, again, financial practices and policies and really put the city in the good position it is today.
Yep, and good job by staff too. We've obviously been working very hard at the city, so great job by staff. I'd like to note that in the report that Moodys did, it said that Cedar Falls has an exceptional profile, and that's not usually seen. So congratulations and great work. So what's the significance of the AAA rating, and how does it benefit citizens specifically?
Sure. So again, as I mentioned earlier, it's about our credit risk. So the higher the rating, the better we look. And so that really means that we get a lower interest rate. And so since these, the debt service on these bonds will be paid by property taxes. So every year when we're paying the principal and interest Obviously, the lower the interest rate, the lower the interest cost. So that really ends up being a property tax savings to all property taxpayers in Cedar Falls.
Well, that's fantastic. It's very exciting to achieve this rating, so great work by staff, and we really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Cedar Falls. We're very proud to have achieved this most highest rating from Moody's. Again, thank you to Director Rodenbeck for joining us on Currents Up Close to speak about how this upgrade benefits both the city and citizens. We look forward to seeing you next time, Cedar Falls.